In the back car, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I need to know.
We're on a tram tour here in Morton, Arboretum.
Anyway, my name is Jim. I'll be the driver and interpreter today. And we're going to take a 1-hour ride around the Arboretum itself. There's very few rules here on this bus. One is stay seated all the time. This will allow you to the south. But there are some winter hardy magnolias, and we've got them here. In the springtime, the blooms are spectacular. Pink, white, rose-colored. And they really are something to see. The other unique thing about the rose family, besides the magnolias, is that they are among the oldest living plants on Earth. They date back some 220 million years ago. They are believed to have preceded the evolution of the honeybee. It's thought that the honeybee gained its first nectar from the magnolia flower itself. This is Crowley Marsh we're going by on the left. Now we have 3 different kinds of wetlands on the property. We have marshes, which have only grass in them. That's what they call them, marsh. We have swamps, which have trees and more woody plants in them. And we have sloughs, spelled S-L-O-U-G-H, which are temporary wetlands. And I'll talk about all of those as we're making our trip today. Now I think you came on one of the best days of the year, not just because of the temperature, but because of the way the sun is shining. As it gets a little bit lower every day, it has these magnificent shadows that are formed within the trees, and I think it just looks beautiful. As I mentioned, we're in the business of collections, research, and education. Now we're coming up to a spot where we're doing some research. We're doing research throughout the Arboretum. This is just one place. Coming up in these groves of trees right there on the right and the left. And what they are, you'll see white baskets. They're called litter collection baskets. And what they do is they're checked every week to see what things may be falling and trying to figure out why, if they're falling too early or if they're falling too late in the autumn. There you can see one right over there, the white collection baskets on the right. You can see one down there on the left as well. Now, if we were a little bit closer, you can see some white pipe sticking out about 6 inches from the bottom of the ground. That white pipe is hollow. It is a pipe. And down on the bottom, it's clear. So what we do is we put cameras down there to record 360 degrees how the roots are reacting and what they're doing at different times of the year. We'll talk more about that in just a second as we go through our buckeye collection. The North American buckeyes on the left, European buckeyes on the right, and we call the buckeye trees among the harbingers. The harbinger trees because they are the trees and shrubs that produce leaves the earliest in the spring and leave them the earliest in the fall. So you can see them turning, almost getting ready to fall off. Now the buckeyes were named by the Native Americans because the nut that falls in the autumn to them looked like the eye of a male deer. Male deer, of course, is known as a buck, and so the tree became a buckeye. On the left, you'll see a kind of rusty-looking sculpture, building, if you will, with honeycomb on top of it. And the reason for that is that's the entrance to our linden collection, L-I-N-D-E-N. And the honeycombs, because the linden flower is among the most popular flower for honeybees and produces arguably the sweetest and clearest honey you can find. So that's there, and you can find a lot of bees on there when those flowers are growing. We actually have hives on the property to collect that honey. Sometimes it's available in gift stores, more often than less than you think. Let's put it that way. We're trying to find that out and come up with a solution if we can. On the far right, you'll see our 17-acre tree breeding nursery. You see the fence around that because that's where we take the trees and shrubs we breed in the wintertime in our greenhouses, transplant them over there, and let them grow until they're ready to be transplanted into the wild. Now, of course, there is a fence there, but for added security from the rabbits and the deer, that fence is electrified. So the deer and the rabbits may be getting through there. There's always going to be a slight charge. Now, on the right, you'll see some oak trees, which look like they should be old enough to resist, but their bark is still succulent, so they have fences around them until they get hardened and are resistant to chewing by the deer and the rabbits. Now there's 200 varieties of oak trees. We have about 60 different varieties on our property. And they're basically our national tree, our oaks. I like to think that's because there's three kinds of oaks. There's red oaks, white oaks, and blue oaks. Red, white, and blue. Now we have red oaks and white oaks on the property. You can't grow blue oaks here. They can only grow in the high desert like you find in southwestern Arizona, California, and northern Mexico. They like the high desert country. Now I've run into white blue oaks when I've been hiking out in Arizona at about 6,000 feet, and they do indeed have blue leaves. They don't get very large shrub type, but they're really beautiful to look at. And it's too bad they just won't grow in this climate. If you ever have time and you're out here on a day with a little leisure time, want to fill your day a little bit more, this is our exhibit, Introduction to Tree Science. There's a trail that walks, it's about a 1 mile trail. It's easy to walk. You can walk half of it or a quarter of it, just turn around and come back. But it's filled with all sorts of information about trees, where they should be planted, what trees are in trouble. I mean, it really gives you more information than you ever thought you wanted to know about trees. So it's worth a visit. Now we're coming to our 400-acre east woods. This is called a wood, by the way, because it has more than 80% tree coverage. And as you can see, there's a distinct difference between the left side, the woods on the left side, and the woods on the right. And that's because the woods on the left side have been filled with invasive species, most notably the European buckthorn. It's just filled, and what they do is they block out the sun, so the sun doesn't get to the forest floor. But look at the difference on the right-hand side. Now that's a natural forest, and what we do with that is we manage that. So our volunteers pull out the invasive species. Now those invasive species, the honeysuckle, the European honeysuckles, and the buckthorn, they're not bad plants on their own. They just don't belong here. They're invasive. But we pull them out on the right-hand side, and you can see how the sunlight gets to the forest floor, and flowers bloom there. I'm sorry about that. Flowers bloom in the spring because the sun gets through there, where they don't bloom on the left-hand side. Now, not only do our volunteers pick the invasive species out, we light this place with a controlled burn, usually in the fall. And what that does is it not only kills the invasive plants, but it kills the invasive plant seeds, and actually produces a layer of fertilizer for the flowers, the prairie flowers, to come up next spring. A lot of down trees throughout here as we go through here, and basically are just trees, leaves, and branches that fell on their own, and we leave them there unless they're blocking a trail or a part of the road, because they will just break down naturally and add to the forest floor. They also, while during the process of breaking down, serve as homes for wildlife like possums and mink and raccoons, chipmunks, all manner of species, and rabbits have built their warrens nearby them. Now this on the right is called the Savannah. The Savannah is an area, a prairie area, with only about 5 to 15% tree coverage, with prairie flowers making up the rest. On the left you'll see basically what's a prairie, and you'll see 3 dead trees over there on the left. Now those are 3 dead ash trees. We don't normally point out dead trees in the Arboretum, but we do that one because they were killed by the emerald ash borer that came through here with a vengeance. Killed millions of ash trees. We lost about 1,400 on the property, but we just let them die because while there's a poison for the emerald ash borer, it's got some toxicity to it that we don't want in our soil. So we just letting them die, and they'll be replaced by trees that are resilient, resistant to those particular kinds of insects and others as well. Now here, as I mentioned, is one of those parking lots, and you see it's right close to a trail, so you can take that trail. There is, by the way, a specific trail map that they should have available at the visitor center where you bought your ticket. You can ask for the trail map, not the map that they gave you. And this is called the Big Rock Visitor Center. Remember I talked to you about that glacier? Well, the reason this is called the Big Rock is not too far on the trail, about 6/10 of a mile, is a rock, a piece of granite that weighs 14 tons. It's about the size of a fully grown elephant. It weighs about as much as this tram weighs when it's fully loaded. And that rock was dragged here by that glacier. And it came, geologists tell us it came all the way from the Hudson River Valley, so that's a long way to drag it. Now those of us who've been around the Arboretum for a while, we enjoy the rock, but by now we just take it for granted. Our biologists were around here just doing some field work, and they discovered drain tile over in that center area. That means the farmers drained that for cropland, and we lost a marsh. So we took out all the drain tile, and it turned back into a marsh. Well, the hawthorns that were growing there, they don't like wet feet, so they died back. But now, hydrologically speaking, a marsh belongs there, and today it is. It does. Now I want to take a look on the right-hand side here. You'll see some tall. Well, they're kind of a grass, and they have they look almost like a tiny banana. That's a lime green on them. Those are the seed pods. They contain the seed pods for the milkweed. Now, the interesting thing about milkweeds, we all know what a monarch butterfly looks like. They're beautiful. And the milkweed is the one plant that the monarch needs to survive. Without it, it can't survive, because when the monarch migrates north from areas of New Mexico and California, it finds the leaves of the milkweed have already started growing. So it's late. That's the sugar maple. And that's what happens when a sugar maple is allowed to grow without any competition. It's gorgeous. And it is considered the most photographed tree in the Arboretum because in the fall it turns such lovely shades of yellow and red. Now this is our peach collection. You can always tell a peach tree by the smooth gray bark that's on it. And if you look at that particular peach, it's an American peach, by the way. If you look at that particular one, you see how that goes down into the ground, the roots go in? Well, some people call that the elephant tree because it looks like the leg of an elephant, and it may look like the toes of an elephant down there.
I thought.
And that's an American peach. On the left is a copper peach. Now, about 2 weeks ago, that was all copper colored, like you see in the ends of the leaves on the ends of the branches. So we call it copper colored peach. So what happens with the copper colored peach with other trees? They're turning red, yellow. In the fall, they turn from copper to green. They'll identify what the flowers are involved. And they'll give you advice on what kind of trees to trust to plant in the property based on what you tell them about the property. All of that is green place. Now we're going in. waterways, and this big river is a navigable waterway. So we worked them, and what we actually started doing was putting in pediments, like that tree trunk you saw, and it's a very large rock. And a lot of them are held right up here. Now this is what's led our museum. The rest of it, this is about a fourth of the size of the entire mansion, so imagine that size. Well, the rest was left on anybody, so we took that part of the mansion down, and geologists looked very closely at the bedrock on which the library is sitting, the garden, the library now museum is sitting. It pronounced it to be safe, so we left that safe, turned it into a museum of the Arboretum itself, and that's open daily for visitors, and of course, to the
Bakit tayo nambunan na? Nambunan na? Ang property.
We are so busy with our classes, we had to build a study room classroom. That's a great classroom that was built a few years ago. Now, if you can look out to your left, I'm sorry for the people on the right, but you'll see the spruce trees. Well, those are the trees that I pointed out to you across the valley that we looked at, because this is the highest point, and so those are the trees that I pointed out to you. Anyway, so they signed away their land, and then they were pushed off the land, directed towards Kansas. They were forced to make that journey. It became known as the Trail of Death because so many of them died of not a proud accomplishment for us. Well, here we are. As Robert Frost would say, two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I chose the one less traveled. That's what I'm going to take, the less traveled one, for a couple of reasons, because it's got some unique stuff. Now, there's one of our 5 sculptures up there. That's called the Silica. You can park right near all of our 5 sculptures, by the way, and it's a short walk to all of them. Take a look at it. They're pretty magnificent. Just on the other side of this path that goes around there is what we call daffodil lane. And it's so called because it has more than 750,000 daffodil blooms planted in it. And when they bloom in early May, it's a spectacular sight to see. And before, they would boil the bark of those cedar trees, and the tea would be stored in barrels. So then we drink it on the boys' long voyages overseas, and while they were here until the tea was seasoned. Here are some red pines that were already actually planted. We think for the same reason, but we've lost a lot of data because there was a fire back in the 50s, a fire in the flood, and lost some of our records. We don't know why they planted these red fir trees, red pines. But they suffered the same problems as spruces. They grew straight, but they never grew very big around. Well, they'll eventually die, and we'll let them all die and cut them down if they are dead and need to be cut down. And what we've done is started planting native trees, like that white pine over there on your right, around here that are native to the area. Coming into our beach collection, these beech trees on the either side of the road, they're planted this way because eventually they will grow up to almost canopy. Here's the road. If you will drive through, it will be gorgeous. We have about 56 different varieties of beech trees here. By the way, most people think beech trees, they think that white bark tree, that's a one kind of tree. Most of them have the dark bark, most trees, dark brown, whatever. And they come in all different sizes and shapes and forms and all forms. And the highest beech tree rating when it burns in any plant in the world, they love using the fire to get their houses warm in the cold, warm winters. But they took off all of them, so we are in the process of reestablishing a particular collection on the property. Well, there's Meadow Lake. That's our largest lake. That was dug up on the Department of Transportation to build the interchange. And that's our largest. Well, of course, roots are necessary. Without any roots, there's no trees, of course. But they're a neglected part of the science. First place, because you have to disturb them to study them. Until recently, they've developed tools that actually you can put a pipe down on the ground with a clear plastic on the bottom and put a camera